Today is a bit of a different format to how we've done previously. And we're going to actually have our first client case study, if you like, someone's been through SFO. And that person is going to be Kevin, who many of you probably know. Well, many of you, I know most people on this call do know him, just looking at the names. But you may not know the details of Kevin's journey and why he's got here and why we are now business partners. So that is what today is going to be all about, but more focusing on how he has transformed his life by systemizing and outsourcing what he does. That's the focus of today. We're not selling anything to you guys. You are part of the community already. So this is just about trying to share with you the experience of somebody who's really applied the Systems for Outsourcing program in an awesome way and done some incredible things with it. Fire any questions you want in the chat box. I'm going to sort of chair a bit. I'll be prompting Kevin with some questions now and again, but I'm really going to give the floor to him to take over. But yeah, and then I'll throw questions at him at appropriate times rather than him being distracted and having to look in the chat box. So feel free to put them in there. I'm not ignoring you if I don't bring it up straight away. I'll just bring it in at a relevant time, unless I know that it's probably going to be covered anyway in what he's going to talk about. So last thing to say is I will have to end this sharpish at 2 o'clock. 1 o'clock your time, simply because I have the call booked straight afterwards. So we're going to cut this a little bit. We'll finish talking before the end to allow a good time for questions as well. But as I say, get your questions in while we're here. That's it. Cool. Right. So I'm not going to introduce, I've got to introduce both of us on here, but I'm not going to introduce me any more than say I'm Stephen Day, if you don't know who I am, because this is meant to be about Kevin. So I'm going to pass the floor or the mic, if you like, over to Kevin to introduce himself and to start by really telling us about what life is like for him now and what it was like before he got involved with the SFO program and all the bits in between, which is the interesting stuff. Cool.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Well, first of all, I think I know a lot of you on here, so some of you will know some of the story, some of you won't. But what I'll do is I'll obviously give you a brief introduction to myself, where I am kind of now in my journey. I'll talk to you a little bit about what it was like before I came and met Steve and got involved with the Systems for Outsourcing program, and then I'll finish off by kind of going into a bit more detail about what I did and why I did it. And I'd like to keep this quite informal. Obviously, if you have any questions, like Steve said, just put them in the chat box, and we'll try and pick off as many as we can towards the end. So, really, I'm a property guy. I've been in property for the last 10 years. I've got experience in pretty much most strategies out there. Single lets, HMOs, serviced accommodation, lease options, exchange for delayed completions, commercial to resi conversions, rent to rents. Done lots and lots of training on property stuff. So I've come from a very much so a property background. We've built a very sizable portfolio. Units, when I say units, serviced accommodation always seems to be broken down by units rather than actual properties or blocks. But including units, we've got about 125 in the portfolio. So it's a substantial business. And to put in perspective, turnover is probably just over $1 million per annum. So it's that's not profit, that's turnover. So obviously there's a lot of costs and things that come into that as well. But ultimately, it was a huge business. We built it from scratch. And those of you that have got any experience in property will realise the cogs and mechanics that go into running a property business. Throw into that 9 staff members as well. It became pretty overwhelming. So it was a very, very interesting journey, I should say. But what I'd like to say is just where I am now. Just obviously painting the picture of what the business is. But I can actually run this whole business now. Within 90 minutes a week. And it's not been easy at all. There's been a lot of hard work to get to that stage, but I can genuinely say hand on heart, I run that whole business now in 90 minutes a week. And we do that with a very structured process, and we've done that through implementing a lot of the Systems for Outsourcing program. But ultimately, I don't take calls. I don't deal with emails. I don't have too much communication with the team. It's all done through structured meetings that take place on a weekly basis. The whole thing is operated through Asana inbox, so I can see exactly what's going on at any given time. I can see which staff are working, what they're working on. I can very easily flick and see the exact tasks that people are working on. I can see them communicating with each other. I can see them attaching things. I have full visibility of the business, and I think that's really important, because for me, I've always been very much a control freak, and with systemizing your business, it was more. I think Steve can probably verify that as well. But for me, it was I needed to see what was going on, and I always had a really big issue with delegating and passing things over to people, and trusting them to do it. And I think that's a big issue that a lot of people have on this journey, is being able to trust somebody else to do the work. And I'm someone who I like to think was pretty good on productivity, pretty tech savvy. I was someone who was always looking for the best way to do something, and this was just a conundrum I couldn't solve. I really couldn't. I'd used Asana before I even met Steve, and I found it really difficult. I couldn't get it. I understood it, but I couldn't get the setup right. So it was notoriously challenging to pass things over, and I was finding myself trying to write instructions to people and giving people instruction to what I'd like them to do, and it was taking me longer to give them instructions than it was to do the task itself. So I was just banging my head against a brick wall. So it's and I'm sure a lot of you can probably resonate with that. If it takes you longer to delegate a task than to actually do the task itself, then clearly there's a major flaw. So the problems I kind of faced was delegation. The other thing that you have is those that you've got staff, and I know some of you certainly have, is they're very, very, you're trying to implement change and trying to make a difference in your business. And I don't know what you guys found out, but my staff members were just so resistant to any change. I tried so many different software packages, and the hassle and the administration that goes into, for example, changing your property management software. It is a relentless task. And then not only have you put effort into that, because all these pieces of software are really good, but if the people that are actually operating them haven't bought in to working with it, it's gonna create so many fail points in the business and cause so many issues. So another main challenge I faced with team, it was really getting team buy-in and being able to get my point across in a clear and concise manner, which allowed them to deliver what I was looking for. The other challenge we faced, I was working 60 to probably 80 hours at the worst. I was doing so much. I was doing all the financial management. I was monitoring, micromanaging every one of them, even down to people that were doing maintenance jobs. I was at times going out to site and checking that the work was being done, because I just didn't trust that somebody else would do it right. So I was so reactive.
Can I ask you, so if that's obviously what it was like before you were micromanaging, you were having difficulty, like especially with field team staff members, for example.
Yeah.
How is that different now? What has changed? Because obviously you still want to know what's going on. So why is things not in the same justice?
Yeah, the main benefit is of systems for outsourcing. What happened to my business was it's the delivery platform. The task templates, operations manuals, and the process of doing that is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, and in that you need to have that to have value in your business. But just the setup of the Asana platform in a way that allowed you to have that feedback, instant feedback, to see what people are working on, to get that level of visibility. Even with the dashboards you can kind of create, you can see how many people are completing how many tasks on a daily basis, and that's it just gives you so much visibility. And if you can see what's going on, it's easier to let go and actually trust. So like I say, what it's like now, it's all done through Asana inbox, and I can just quickly say I like something. I know a lot of people like the like facility in Asana, but I quite often just strategically will just ad hoc like a couple of things on there, just so that they know I'm watching. And it's not they need to know I'm watching, because it's about accountability as well. And we take a lot of risk as a business owner, And if people you bring in that I found, just a story. I'll tell you a real life story how bad it actually was at one point. My actual property manager, right, who's a field-based member of staff. He's always in the field, managing the HMOs. Ultimately, he was caught. Right, this is shocking. He was caught in one of the empty void rooms that hadn't been rented out yet, having an afternoon kip in one of the beds, and that's just
something else then.
it wasn't anything. Fortunately, it wasn't worse than that, but that was bad enough. I mean, then I didn't have any way of policing that. He could have done that, most weeks, most days, and I wouldn't have known. So the key thing is having that level of control and visibility. So for me, the delivery platform was equally, if not more important than the actual process of systemizing the business. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, very much so.
So
actually, no, on that point again, just I will push you for one small bit more. With regards to your field team, how do you, for example, monitor what they're doing outside in the field and bring it back into Asana? Because that's something that I think that a lot of people struggle with the concept of.
Yeah, what I do now, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, and I know that there's some quite technical people on this call, and I would classify you highly in that bracket as well, Steve. But what I do, I always talk to people about this, is the importance of what I call closing the loop. When I think a really good way of looking at your business is if you map it out in a flowchart first. So each section or each process, map out in a flowchart, because that enables you visibility of what needs to happen. Because quite often people will start taking ad hoc tasks and systemizing them and creating a task template, and then they'll delegate that, which is great. But then they forget that there's probably multiple follow-up actions that need to happen as a result of that task that's been delegated. So that's what I call closing the loop. And I use Google Forms loads because it's a really great way of reporting and collating information and measuring information. Because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it or take it to the next level. So what I do is I have loads of recurring tasks for a virtual assistant. So if you delegate a task out, for example, like a property visit, a property visit is a prime example, like an inspection, if you like. There are multiple things that person's looking for. They're looking for your fire safety equipment, check that that's all compliant. They're looking for any maintenance related issues. They're looking for, speaking to the tenants to find out if there's any tenant related issues. And all of these things need to be captured and recorded in a way and then followed up on. Because if you just go and do a property visit, take some photos of maintenance issues, for example, and then they tick that off. If nobody's actually dealing with their feedback from that inspection, then those maintenance issues or anything else is going to go unnoticed. It's just going to fall into the abyss. So I call it closing the loop. So basically anything with a follow-up action, I create a task template, send it out there. I use a Google form so that the person on site, because the good thing about Google Forms is it's pretty mobile responsive as well. So the field team can complete a Google form as a checklist on a smartphone or a tablet. And then that obviously automatically goes into a spreadsheet. You can export that into a Google Sheet. And obviously in a spreadsheet, there's lots of things you can do with it. And I then have a virtual assistant on a daily basis going through all the forms that are completed on a daily basis and pulling out the information, and there's rules associated with that. So if there's a maintenance issue, she takes the picture that's been taken, she takes the detail of what the person put and puts it in a new task template, which I've already pre-created, that then gets assigned automatically to the maintenance provider in that area. And the virtual assistant does that. So that's what we call closing the loop. So it go out, inspection happens, but the result of that inspection, the virtual assistant has taken that information, populated it in a new task template, and it's gone out to the maintenance guy. In the same respect, the maintenance guy has a Google form to do, that when he completes it, he puts a completed photo and ticks that it's been verified. And again, the virtual assistant goes through that, comes through, and then she will then put that and tick that maintenance task off. So then we know that's been completed. And you've got the full audit trail of that whole process. But you can only kind of do these things if you have the flow chart to see exactly what needs to happen and all the different scenarios that come. Some people are quite technical and they can do kind of automation and API integration and stuff like that, where you can use Zapier and other pieces of software to kind of do that side of it for you. But I think there's a real value in utilizing virtual assistants, certainly because they can take their initiative as well. And sometimes there's something that will come from an automation that the automation wouldn't pick up. But if you've got a virtual assistant there with certainly with initiative, they can put a comment in there saying, is this right, or I'm just a bit concerned with this, and it will pick up anything that's out of the ordinary, and then you can obviously deal with that rather than it being missed. So I've always liked that kind of model.
Okay.
And
well, one of the things that, I mean, for those of you who haven't got to the end of the program yet, we'll cover doing flowcharts and things a little bit later on. But also the idea of using a virtual assistant to test your systems, even if you want to go to full automation, you really should test, improve, and get your systems absolutely nailed down before you take the step of creating all your automations. I mean, using Zapier and things like that is actually relatively easy. So you can, and we do actually develop our systems through Zapier sometimes because it's quite easy to maintain. Our virtual assistant does that, not us. So, but for coming up with the workflows that you're maybe not totally familiar with yet, if it's a new part of your business you're systemizing, then using your virtual assistant to test and try it all out, and then you've got the decision: do you stick someone on like Kevin has as a permanent role that they become an expert in that, or is a part of that you can actually automate and outsource as well? So yeah, I totally agree.
And the other point on that is don't worry about it being perfect. I mean, there's probably several of my processes and systems I've done that I could probably go back and revisit and probably cut a few parts of the process out, but it works, and what you'll find as well by just getting these getting your videos done, getting your virtual assistants involved in the actual implementation of the tasks and delegating to them, you'll find that if there's any fail points or anything that's not quite right, you'll know about it really quickly. Yeah. And if you keep promoting feedback from your virtual assistants, how did you find that? Was that easy to follow? Just these simple questions after you're delegating a new task, it can give you so much information, and they'll even make suggestions to how you should change that you probably wouldn't have seen had you not asked them that question. So I think it's a really, really valid point, is that, my systems and processes, I think there's about 174 of them in total. Some of them aren't perfect. I'll be upfront and honest with you, but they work. And if they work, then why would I'll look to improve them. And one of the things I've got on my list in the future is to get a virtual assistant to go through them all with a fine-tooth comb, suggest improvements, and re-record my videos, because all of them are kind of first take videos for me. Whereas I know, Steve, a lot of your original videos have been re-recorded probably several times with virtual assistant doing them. So you can do that at a later date, but the key is getting all of the systems and processes in your business into a video and a task template in a usable format as quickly as possible. Because that
point is really important, though. The idea of that video that you record, that first time you're recording yourself doing a task, realistically, the only person that ever needs to watch that is the person who's creating the operations manual.
Yeah.
And then it's a useful add-on as a training material for someone in the future if it's good, or if it's not good, then, as Kevin said, you get your virtual assistant to re-record it once they become an expert themselves in doing the task. But people get hung up on creating videos that are actually succinct. And just 1 second, I'm just going to mute someone. Okay, sorry. I think someone was unmuted. Yeah, so exactly. The idea is just get it done, get it out there. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you make. That is one of the barriers that people have, is they've got to create these perfect videos, and it's just not true. All you need to do is show them on the screen what you're doing and talk about it. And even if you make mistakes, talk about the wrong thing, you just explain that and let them get on with creating the operation manual. So yeah, totally agree.
And it's really good now, because since I've stepped out of the running of the property business now, the actual team and the middle management are actually really buying into it now and actually doing their own videos. And we've had so many videos being produced now that I've had no involvement with. And I think to myself, how do I do that process now? I have to watch their videos to know what they're doing. So they've really bought onto it. And it is a culture that you create. And if you haven't got the beauty of the platform as well, is that you've got the virtual assistants are onboarded, so they're completely in sync with how it works and what you're trying to deliver. But the resistance comes from existing team members. But as soon as they start seeing the benefit of it, it then starts to become a culture. And like I say, when you start getting your team members actually recording their own videos is really quite, it makes you feel really good, because you know that they've actually bought into it, because that's the hardest part. But
even recording their own videos as well, but actually you talk about the improvement side of stuff, and we discussed this before about Amy. She develops part of the course are developed by the virtual assistants now, because they use it more than I do on a daily basis. So they're perfectly positioned, and so they're actually coming up with suggestions, creating the flow charts, and then recording the whole videos, and then operation managers, etc. So once you get people into this, like Kevin said, once you get people into the culture of becoming part of the process of creating this amazing business, then people really get into it and get excited about it. Because suddenly you're empowering people to actually make change in a business, where otherwise they would just be basically doing what they're told. And most people want to actually do something constructive with life, not just be a muppet or whatever. They actually want to be a part of something. So you can empower people to do that. One of the things we're just introducing, sorry Kevin, I'll shut up in a minute, is a reward system, if that's the right word. So basically everybody that makes a suggestion that we then implement sort of gets a tick in a box, and actually we're going to reward with bonuses or holidays or whatever to actually encourage people to do that. Something we discussed in our last leadership meeting about bringing that in, because it's such an important part of this process. You cannot, 174 processes, there's no way Kevin can manage those. So if he doesn't delegate that out, his job is now going to be managing his process, which is obviously not what this is all about. So it is such an important part, and that's why I'm stressing it and taking up time, but I hope it's worth it.
No, that's really valid. But no, I'll go into a little bit about how I started as well. I think that's probably going to be quite useful, because I know some people will be quite far down the line, and some people will be just beginning. But ultimately, the key is another mindset thing here. I don't like talking too much about mindset, because I've always been somebody who just goes and does stuff. But mindset is important. But I think one of the things was people thinking, oh, where do I start? How do I do this? I've got no time to do it. And all I looked at when I started was, what am I doing? And I know Steve obviously talks in the course about doing the time tracker and looking at where he's spending the time. But I do that religiously now, because at the end of each day, I look back at what I've done in the day, and I think to myself, I highlight and just ask myself really simple questions. Should I have done that? Could I have outsourced it? It's just those two questions alone. You then start thinking, right, then if you've highlighted any as being marked that, I shouldn't have been done it, I should have outsourced that, then the next day I'll just create a video really quickly. Bam, that's an operations manual is created, and that will be gone. And you keep doing that on an ongoing basis, because I fell into the trap after pretty much systemizing the whole business, where I wasn't continuing to monitor what I was doing. You find yourself, like, you've done this amazing job, then you fall back into the trap of doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. So it's the time tracker is really important. Do it religiously, because you'll really see some patterns about what you're doing. And I think I've said this to a few of you before, but this is honestly true. When I first started this, I used to think I was a really productive guy, and I was spending 75% of my time, 75% of my time answering calls, responding to emails. I mean, I was getting somewhere in the region of 500 a day in emails. I was getting, God knows how many calls I was getting. The phone never stopped ringing, and my task list was never ending. So it took me 75% of the time dealing with emails, calls, and sorting my tasks. Not doing anything in my task list, actually ordering it into some form of manageable arrangement. And then I was finding I was never getting anything done, because I had such little time to do anything. And it was a real eye-opener. I thought, oh my God, I thought I was pretty productive, pretty good. But I was wasting 75% of my time. So clearly my focus from an early stage, which is probably, you have to consider that they're all relatively complex tasks to outsource. But I didn't have the kind of structure that the course has got now, with the quadrants and being able to categorize stuff for quick wins. I just looked at, right, 75% of my time that I need to get rid of that. So straight away, I started researching and looking at how I could manage my emails more effectively. And I started, I spoke to Steve, see what Steve was doing. And I came up with a way of my emails management, which is all it is a rule for every email. And it's not anything more complicated than that. Everybody's emails are very personal. They're very, the way you manage them will be very personal. You have your own way, and my way will be very different to Steve's way, for example, and probably to
the basics are fundamentally exactly the same. How you actually interact with your VA or your maybe subtly different, but it's all just about really having a spreadsheet with rules on.
Yeah, completely. You just have
I've just posted about this morning on the Facebook on the Systems and Outsourcing Facebook group with a quick guide to doing this as well. So if anyone is interested in that, then you can have a look at that as well.
The point I'm trying to make is that even really complicated stuff that sounds really complicated, I've always tried to follow the keep it simple, stupid method. And, all it was is a rule for an email. And I found that there's probably only about 4 or 5 main rules for 95% of my emails. So you just work those rules out, get them set out, and get your VA to follow them. I mean, I like channeling a lot of the emails. Well, a lot of them don't reach me anymore, but any emails that need actioning, I like bringing them through to Asana, because I don't like going anywhere else. I like everything coming into one central hub. But it's just really simple, and when you get emails that come in, you'll find that there'll be stuff that slips through the net at the early stages. Don't worry, this is an evolution process, because it's going to change. You're going to be creating rules as new emails appear. So when you start, delegating the management of your inbox, it's a bit of a leap of faith, but you just say to your virtual assistant, if you're not sure, send it into my Asana inbox, or if you're checking your email client externally, just say leave it there, and I'll advise you. I'll update the rule for that separately. So if they're not sure, always check. That's the point. Have a checking mechanism, then nothing gets missed. But once you start doing that for a few weeks, your spreadsheet gets longer and longer and longer, more and more and more rules, and you then start seeing far fewer emails reaching you. And it's, I get probably between 5 and 7 a day now. That's probably, and I'm trying to work on getting that even lower. And anything that comes into to Asana now under an email, I can even respond in the comments of that email and send it back. My virtual assistant will see that, and they'll actually go into my client and respond on my behalf. So I don't even have to respond to the emails anymore. I can just fill in a comment.
That, to me, that very point is the single most powerful part of outsourcing your emails to Asana. Because I probably open my email inbox once every 2 weeks now. And that is just if there's something I need to search for or whatever, just for a task that I'm doing. But the mass benefit is that as soon as you do all of your responding through your PA or your VA, and I use a English PA for security reasons for some of my email accounts, and a Filipino VA for the majority of the accounts. And the benefit is that if you respond and comment in Asana and then they action and respond on your behalf, they're kept in the loop. As soon as you go into your inbox and make a reply, which they are not party to, you've taken them out. So therefore, you then have to educate them about what that was all about. Yes, you can copy them in with an email, but it all gets a bit messy. If you have a task set up and you just forward your email to Asana really, really quickly, it's just an easy thing to set up. And then you basically can have a conversation about that email, which can be as long as it needs to be, without ever having to bounce emails back and forth. And that is one of the most incredible things and the unexpected benefits of using Asana for email management. And again, we'll talk about this later in the course and give you a quick demo on how you set this up. So.
And the other one that was big was phone calls. I've got a virtual assistant who picks up all my calls, and they're based in the Philippines. And it was probably lucky more than anything when they recruited in an administrative role initially. But I just noticed on his CV he used to work in customer service for HSBC. So he sounds American. He speaks probably better English than I do. Slight American tinge to it. But he's and all I did was again looked at ways and means I could get calls outsourced to him, and it was all I use is Skype Business. Again, keep it really, really simple. You can actually get localized numbers in Skype Business. So I use a Cambridge number for my property business, and allocate to him, give him some Skype credit every month, and any call that comes in is the main company number. It goes straight to him. My calls are diverted to that number as well. Anything comes to him, he has a simple Google form. Again, Google form. It's a call log. And all it is I don't make it into anything more complicated. It's who's called. It's always time and date stamped, because that's what will happen with the Google form as standard. But who's called, Is it about a property, he needs to put the property it's about, or what the reason they're calling for, and just a few notes. And then there's 2 actions that come from every call. It's either an admin-based task. Sorry, 3 actions. There's an admin-based task. There's a field-based task. If it's a property-based, this is going predominantly about property, you see. If it's a field-based task, when somebody has to go out to a property, or it's administrative, someone in the office can sort it out, or there's no further action. Okay, but all these are logged. Okay, and if it's an administrative task, that goes into a task template onto a to be scheduled board. Ops manager picks that up and assigns it to the relevant administrator. So it's all done as a rule, as a process. If it's a field-based task, again, goes onto a to be scheduled board, and the operations manager will schedule that to the appropriate field-based member who's got capacity to go and deal with that issue. And it all happens without me. But the beauty of it all coming through Asana, I'm added as a task follower for everything. So I see these flows of things happening through my Asana inbox, and I've had no involvement. I just see that so-and-so's called, his cooker's broken, for example. I just see that. It will be assigned to the field member, so I have to go and check that that's really the case, and it's not switched on or whatever. He'll go out, he'll do a checklist, because every time we visit a property, we do a checklist as standard, just for audit trail. That will be picked up. It will be a maintenance task that's then created, because yes, he's confirmed that it's not worked. That will be closed the loop by the virtual assistant, and then it will be assigned to the maintenance guy, who will then fit the new oven, or purchase the oven and then fit the oven. So it's all done automatically without me. And it's only because you've got the workflows and you can actually see how that does. But back to calls, really, really simple. I just made it really, really simple. There was 3 outcomes from every call. So, and you just have it in a call log, and I can see now, I can go back and see calls for the last 4 or 5 months, how many calls we've had. I can see busy periods. So I can now start looking at, I need somebody to take my out of hours calls. Well, actually, I've only had 1 or 2 calls out of hours. There's no point bringing someone in to cover that period, because I'm only getting so few. But they deal with all my service accommodation calls as well. It's service accommodation stuff for guests. It's all done through just a process and just understanding rules of how your business works. And nobody will know how your business works better than you. So calls, really, they're quite simple to outsource. And I can't recommend doing it enough, because my phone never rings anymore, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And
if you haven't got a property manager or a letting agent, then phones and emails from 125 units must be fairly substantial. So I've just meant that because you don't use letting agents, you are your own.
Yeah.
So this is basically the whole business isn't just a portfolio management. It's an entire lettings, including, correct me if I'm wrong, but finding tenants, getting tenants into your properties, everything.
Yep.
So that's why I think it's pretty amazing. So
yeah, well, I found that a lot of letting agencies and things were quite competent, and they charged a lot more than they were worth. That's another.
My PA's job now is basically managing my letting agents, and it's if I had more properties, I would ditch them immediately. It's just not worthwhile with only having the number that I've got. Kevin, I'm gonna draw things a little bit to a close.
Okay.
But is there any sort of take home stuff or anything you wanted to get out there that you've not?
Just that everything can, within reason, pretty much everything can be outsourced. I mean, the one I was going to talk about is the task management stuff as well, which we can do on another time. But again,
that's all right. I just wanted to just make sure you got in all the good bits. So if you want to talk about that now, there's time.
Yeah, well, I have a slightly different method of, everybody manages their tasks in a slightly different way, and they'll structure it in a slightly different way. But again, I was finding you're faffing around moving due dates, you're faffing around moving this to be done on this date, this to be done then, this is more important than that. And it takes so long doing that every day to try and give yourself a structured model. So again, simple rules. I treated this very similar to my emails. So when tasks are created, if it's a specific task type or it's tagged in a certain way, there's a rule associated with that. So, and I use a very simple coding system as well. So if I think something needs to be done, I just initial things before the task, in the title of the task. So if, for example, if I was out and about and I wasn't working forever, and I thought, oh, Steve needs to do something, I need to create a task, I do it on my mobile and I just put SD at the front. It will go into my Asana list. I'll be added as a follower at standard, and it will be assigned to Steve Data Complete, and it will also be assigned to the main company task board, so which everything goes on, because again, I like having everything in one place. But the point of the matter, again, is quite personal, and it's how you want your tasks to do, but all it takes is a few minutes when you're doing the more than, on top of when you're doing the task originally, to record yourself doing it and just talk yourself doing it. And again, just understand that it's not going to be perfect to begin with, and there's going to be rules that are going to be created in a spreadsheet that the virtual assistant is going to follow, so she knows how to deal with the different tags that you're putting on your tasks and the different initials and the codes that you're using. But it's really simple, really, really simple. And now I get up in the morning and my task list is sorted. It's in, all the dates are all aligned, everything's in the right order, everything's in the right category, and I just go, right, what am I doing? And I crack on with what I've got to work, but saves so much time. So again, it's quite a complex thing, but it was not challenging to outsource when you just break it down into really simplistic little parts. So I think that's important. Steve's got a very different way of doing it. I like having everything on one board. Steve likes having things on multiple projects and only very few things on his. He does more of a getting things done kind of methodology. So again, it's
David Allen. If you're interested in the book, Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Yeah, just wanted to, obviously, that's how I started, by freeing up 75% of my time by doing those things. A lot of the other stuff was financial, where my time was being spent. But the point of the matter is, once you free your time up, and you can free your time up a lot, because you've got to remember, you would have been doing this work anyway. Okay. And I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to data and stuff. I was actually looking at, it takes probably on average between 3 and 7 minutes longer to do the task when you're recording and narrating than it would have done otherwise. So when you say, oh, I haven't got time to systemize my business, when you're doing the work anyway, you haven't got time because you are doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing. And if you're doing it anyway, and it's only going to take you 3 to 7 minutes longer to actually record yourself doing it, and then you can get that outsourced, nobody's got the excuse they haven't got the time to do it. And that's, again, a real mindset thing that you kind of need to get yourself over. And then once you've managed to get yourself freed up, and you can start seeing things happening of your time, you can then focus on how you're going to do it for your business. And I think the important thing here is, you've obviously, Steve's developed the personal systemization plan and things, and the quadrant for categorizing tasks and things. This wasn't available when I did the course. But the point I'm making is, you need to have a structure and a plan to deal with it, so you get the maximum results. And all I did was looked at my organizational chart, looked at the people, and I started at the bottom, because they were predominantly the simplest roles, and I systemized their role fully. And then I moved up to middle management, systemized their role. Then I moved across to maybe finance. You just do it in sections, so you can get things done in a manageable way.
Can I just interject? So one way you can do that really more easy, if you already have people in these roles. So like you actually already had people doing this stuff. It's slightly different if you're doing everything yourself, and therefore, you will actually look at these roles individually, sort of, and try and compartmentalize those tasks. But if you've already got somebody in the role, then you give them the task of creating a personal systemization plan. What are they doing with their time? How are they spending it? And then they prioritize what they're going to record, because it's the person who's doing the role that you want to actually be recording these videos, not you. And as I said, if you're a one-man band, like I was at the beginning, then you will be doing everything. So therefore, you need to come up with some of this. But as soon as you start getting people involved in your company, or if you already have, like Kevin did, then you need to get this out. And just to clarify, just so no confusion, the personalized systemization plan is about getting everything you're doing right now off your chest and off your workload, and then going into the whole organization chart and roles and everything like that is the next step when you're free, just in case that wasn't totally clear.
And just to highlight that point, if I did this whole process again, I could, it took me the best part of 6 months, probably slightly over. But if I did it again, I reckon I could have done it in half that time, because what you have to remember with what I did is I was a control freak. So I did every video. It's only pretty recently that I've had other people doing my videos. And you think how long it takes to do 174 videos. It's not a quick process. It took so many days to do it. But another thing to recommend is if I had resistance to change with my team. So that's why I predominantly done that, if I'm being upfront and honest. But if you haven't got those team and you're bringing people in, you can outsource the creation of videos of those processes, and that supercharges the process. And another thing to think of as well is a really, really good book to read is The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. It's about doing the teeny tiny little things on a day-to-day basis that are easy to do and just as easy not to do. But it's a compounding effect. You're never standing still. If you're doing those little things every day, the effect of say doing 2 videos a day, for example, that's 10 a week. That's probably 40 to 50 a month. When I think I made, say, for 3 months.
One video, if you even break it.
Yeah.
If you did 5 videos a week, that will probably, to begin with, this is 5 tasks, recurring tasks that you do on a weekly basis that you're never, ever going to do again.
Yeah.
It's massive. But
it is. It just breaks it down. And to the contrary, if you didn't do that, you think how stressed and you'd be still doing all the stuff 3 months down the line. Whereas if you've done that, 3 months down the line, you've got 150 videos. It really is very achievable when you break it down. 3 to 7 minutes longer than actually doing the task, in its entirety yourself. So it's really, really, really easy to do. If you just have that kind of habitual ritual to your working life, and it might sound a bit boring. Some people might dread it, but a couple of videos a day is very achievable by anyone.
Yeah, but it doesn't take long to start getting into it, because as soon as you start realizing those tasks you absolutely hate doing that drain the living soul out of you, you never do again, that's when you suddenly realize, oh, actually, this is probably worth the investment. So yeah, cool. I had a question from was it Mark? I think it was Mark. I can't remember now. Yes, it was from Mark. Because you now outsourcing a lot of your admin and other roles, are you less reliant on your UK stuff? Have you reduced the hours, or are you using them differently, for example?
Yeah, if I'm brutally honest with you, I could replace. The only people I would need to keep are the field-based members of staff. I mean, I've got an ops manager who's on a high salary, and one of my first ever virtual assistants, actually, be careful, this is being recorded, but more capable than my ops manager. But ethically, I can't, she's the lady who's been in that role. She's been in from the very beginning. She's trustworthy. She's loyal, and I couldn't, but I could, if I was being a ruthless businessman, I could replace her with a virtual assistant, save a significant amount on my wage bill. But I won't because of that reasons. But 100%, anything that's not field based, you can replace with virtual assistants, and it would make a significant cost saving, because obviously, depending on what you're paying a virtual assistant, of course, but generally speaking, they're significantly lower wages than you're paying UK-based people.
Are your staff office-based, or are they remote?
No, I don't have an office. It's a complete remote working environment. Everybody works from home or works from,
And just out of interest, what do you pay your UK staff hourly rate on average? The in-office staff.
Office staff, I pay between £10 and £12 an hour.
That's the same as me. I pay mine.
But the ops manager is on a much higher whack. Okay. Yeah, so it's but yeah, no, 100%. And I found that the virtual assistants that I've worked with, I know that some people have had some negative experiences. I've touched wood, I haven't had to date, and I found them to be so hardworking and conscientious, and just a pleasure to work with. I mean, but I think that's only because the delivery of the clear and concise instruction is there. If it's not there, even the most conscientious, nice virtual assistant is going to be a challenge to manage, because they're not understanding what you're trying to achieve. Yeah.
And I mean, not to blow my trumpet or the SFO trumpet, but actually they're having a recruitment system set up that takes the effort of actually looking at people's competency and testing them out before you go about hiring them and training them, for me, has made the biggest difference, because I had quite a few bad experiences before I put the time and effort into putting on, developing all that side of stuff. So, and that's, I know where you've got all of your current VAs from. So, and we've discussed this before. So I know that's something you've mentioned yourself. So,
yeah.
Thank you. Is anybody got any questions for Kevin or for myself? It doesn't matter. Anyone who ask anything about what Kevin's talked about what he's managed to? I'm sorry, I've got noises going off in the background.
I will say, if anybody obviously wants to go through any of this stuff with me in more detail, then just drop me a line and we can arrange a call. That's fine. More than happy to do that.
You might regret that one. Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. Cheers, Mark. They might pick one of the VAs from the list, and all is going good. We've had very little negative feedback. There was one problem that came up, which I think, is Glenn still with us? Oh no, Glenn had to go, but he might still be listening in. We recruited somebody that actually, we typically go from the Philippines, and just by chance that it's a Christian country, vastly majority Christian country. So we've never had this issue come up. But somebody used the onlinejobs.ph site to advertise their own services and to apply for a role that was based somewhere in the Middle East, I can't remember where, and they were Muslim. And because of their religious beliefs, they couldn't deal with anything to do with mortgages or banking or interest. Any part of the process that involved money, basically, was impossible for them to work with. So that is actually one of the only, not negatives, that's the wrong word for it, but that's the only problems that we've actually had. And unfortunately, that was essential to that the role that was being hired for. So we had to find somebody else to replace them. But it's very little. We've had a couple of early days before we really nailed the process. I've had some problems. But nothing else that anyone's majorly come back with. Yeah, plenty. So yeah, Kevin has just very slickly stuck a feedback form on. We're going to ask for your feedback, especially because you're nice beta people, about these webinars and about the masterminds and any of the webinars we do. So please just take a couple of minutes. It really is a short one. It's not a long 25-question essay thing or anything. It's just a few questions. Helps us to make sure that we're giving you content that you want and you find useful. It's obviously this is here for your benefit. It's here for us to serve you guys as best we possibly can. So the more feedback you give, the suggestions about what you want covered, what was good about it, what was bad about it, is really, really helpful, and will make us obviously be able to do things better, which is nice. Any other questions while you've got us? Any problems people are having? Yeah, second Glenn's comment, inspirational. Really is. I mean, it's pretty obvious that I think Kevin's done a pretty good job, because otherwise I wouldn't have agreed to be business partners with him. So it sort of goes without saying, really. But is anyone else? You can just compliment Kevin. I mean, that's also allowed. He's done a pretty inspiring job, and yeah.
Just on that point, I really appreciate people's comments, but it's not anything remarkable. It's just I had such a pain. I had such a pain point where I was just stressed. It was horrible, and I just had to do something about it. And that's the point of the matter. You can only change it, but it's not something that's anything special. It's just disciplining yourself to spend those extra 3 to 7 minutes on everything you're doing to record it. If you do that, you'll find that you get to the stage where you've got a fully systemized business. And okay, I'll be upfront and honest with people, because I'm not about painting the perfect picture. There were still several inefficiencies in my business, but it pays me well, and I don't have to do anything for it. So it works exactly what I want. I will go back and well, what I'm doing in my weekly meetings with the management team is getting them to scrutinize what we're doing and how we're doing it, and they're making the improvements now. I mean, I think a really valid point here, and I forgot to state this, and Steve mentioned it, was service accommodation business. We took on, those of you who know me through service accommodation, we took on a 17-room hotel in Blackpool. All right, it's Blackpool, it's not the nicest place in the world, but my involvement in that was extremely minimal, because it was happening through the stuff that we put in place, and the service we'd been doing, the contacts we'd been making with our existing service accommodation. It came to us, and it was all through the systems and processes that I'd put. I didn't have to go and find that. It came to us, and it didn't come to me. It came to my staff, and they were the ones who progressed it through. And I just got involved at the last minute to say, yeah, let's go for it. It makes sense. So if you get that understanding that it's not perfect, and I'm not painting the perfect picture, but I paint a picture that's so much better than it was, before.
From 60, 70, 80 hours a week down to 6 hours a month. So
yeah. And I have, there's another book that I'll recommend to people, which again is probably a different conversation altogether. There's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, and me and Steve are applying some of the business principles to systems and outsourcing company. But it ultimately, what it is it kind of takes the E-myth, the whole E-Myth was a life-changing book from a very high strategic level, but it kind of takes that and brings it down into a more operational pie, pieces of the pie, so you can actually start applying this to your business. Now, it is probably geared at medium-sized businesses and above, but I think the principles, if you put them into place, they're very applicable to whatever size business you are.
It's a book I read and thought, this is amazing, I'm going to come back to this in a year. And then a year later, I have come back to it, and we are seeing huge benefit from applying it.
And just one of the key points from that is they call them level 10 meetings, but ultimately you have a weekly meeting, and it's very, very structured. It never overruns. It has the same agenda every week, but you're populating, issues that for the week into an issues list, and you're spending the vast majority of that meeting solving those issues and then creating follow-up actions that have to be completed by certain days. But it's very, very structured. But when you're looking at managing a business remotely, having those structured meetings are like gold, because part of that as well as you get your KPI performance, and you kind of analyze that as a team. That creates issues. It's all I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's quite people want to talk.
Well, again, this is something we're going to be developing over the coming months into a module for the Systems for Outsourcing program. So you'll be able to basically, we're trying, testing, perfecting it all within the SFO system, and then we'll be bringing it in and letting you guys have it. So watch this space with this one. But yeah. Right, I'm going to draw things to a close, if I may. Any final comments on us? So Mark was asking what the book was called. That's called Traction by, is it Gino Wickman?
Gino Wickman.
Yeah. Gino Wickman, yeah. And I'll ask a question. If anyone's still on, you can put this in your feedback form if I've got time to do it before I close the chat. But I was just thinking, as Kevin was saying about his business. So the Systems for Outsourcing company was entirely built using the Systems for Outsourcing platform. And it was sort of a self-perpetuating thing, if you like, or in the way that I built the basics and then it developed itself as we went through it. But that was a very, very different journey from applying this to an existing business. I built the business through outsourcing. And I don't know if that would be helpful to actually talk a bit from a completely different angle about how you can start a brand new business and actually use the platform to build that up in a very different way than having other staff involved. But yeah, something to think about. If that would be useful, then please let me know, and I'll happily Kevin can interview me and do a case study. But we will see. Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. Slight Edge by Jeff Olson was the other one, and those will disappear in a second when I close this chat. And if anyone hasn't read it, the E-Myth by Michael Gerber is an absolute must book for systemization mindset. It really puts into picture the difference it make, and proving point with Kevin and his journey, and myself. I mean, the number of hours, the amount of work that gets done now, the hundreds and hundreds of hours they get done every month, and there's only little on me. Well, now there's Kevin as well, and but yeah, and I just sit back in amazement at the amount of stuff that actually happens now without me even involved with it. So it does really work.
You're delegating too much to me, though, Steve. That's the problem.
That's why I'm going on holiday next week. No, literally. Cool. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Always a pleasure. Cheers, Kevin.
Thanks.
Pretty cool. Learned some bits about you I didn't know before, so that's awesome as well. And I'll speak to everyone in due course. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.